taking it for myself. I don't think anybody could have done any better. Anywho, it is so great to be back with you tonight. It's just somehow my phone decided to go off. So it's just, I just think about how last year was the first year we were all kind of back. It was still with masks on, and it was a little, but it's so great to be back together again. It's just amazing that we're back together. So I have the pleasure of introducing our keynote speaker, our guest for tonight. So just have a few things to read. So Domenika Lynch is the Executive Director of the Aspen Institute Latinos in Society program in Washington, D.C. She flew from D.C. to be here with us tonight, so we thank you for that, Domenika. So she is, the mission of the Aspen Institute Latinos in Society program is all about empowering Latino communities and promoting long-term economic growth and resilience. Over the course of 2 decades in leadership roles, Domenika has overseen strategic planning, policy advocacy, and public affairs campaigns for nonprofits and corporations, increasing donor and stakeholder support and raising literally millions of dollars for organizations and outlets. From July of 2016 to May of 2019, Domenika served as President and CEO of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute. If you're not familiar with that, you should look up chci.org. With the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute in DC, and she's previously spent more than a decade as an Executive Director of the Latino Alumni Association at the University of Southern California, otherwise known as USC. By the way, my son spent a weekend at USC this summer. He loved it. Her professional breadth extends into the corporate sector with previous leadership positions at Bank of America and at Univision. Domenika currently serves on the board of directors of the Congressional Management Foundation and also serves on the Bank of America's National Community Advisory Council, which advises the bank on community development, environmental, and consumer policy issues. So she is also a graduate of the USC Price School of Public Policy, and she holds a master's degree from the USC Rossier School of Education. Can we please give her a warm St. Louis round of applause?
So vanity won over. I couldn't bring my phone, so I brought my computer. I am so delighted to be here. It's really an honor. I want to thank all of you for hosting me, especially Eduardo. You're doing an incredible job promoting Latino businesses and entrepreneurs here in St. Louis. And to Fernanda Estrada, who's made me feel so special. And I think that after coming here and staying at the Four Seasons, I don't know how I'm going to top that. I'm going to want to stay here every time I come. So thank you so very, very much. I do want to begin my remarks by saying that whenever there is a tragedy in a community, it's important to honor it because we know that we've lost lives, and it's painful when it's young people, right? It reminds us that we are living in really challenging times, and we're at the heels of the pandemic, and we're vulnerable as a human family. And that's why events like tonight are critical, because they bring us together in community to really connect to what our purpose is. So I want to honor the Hispanic entrepreneurs that you're in this room. You make us proud. I have become such a fan because I think you guys represent the American dream, right? You're hungry, you're scrappy, you're going to make it work, and that's what the spirit is about. So tonight, I have the distinction of really giving you a little bit of the state of play of Latinos in the United States, and why now more than ever, it's really critical for Latinos to lead as entrepreneurs in corporate America and across different sectors. The Aspen Institute Latinos in Society, our North Star is really around building community wealth. Because when communities are building wealth, then we have more stability, we have children that are thriving and families that are thriving. So making Latino achievement visible is critical to that end. I want to share with you a story that I think is so apropos, being at the Four Seasons Hotel, and really the story that set my career in motion. This is 2000, at the Four Seasons Hotel at the Beverly Wilshire Hotel in Rodeo Drive. Anybody here saw the movie Pretty Woman? Okay, so that hotel, beautiful hotel. I had just graduated from USC, really proud, bought my ticket. It was important to get back when you get the scholarship. And I was in the audience. And that evening, a young woman was being recognized. She was one of our top talents. And she got on the stage, thanked the sponsors, thanked the alumni for investing in her education, and she had some great news, that she had been accepted to medical school. And how that evening was such a celebration for her, and she wanted to dedicate the award to her mother. So she asked her mother to stand, and she said, Mami, por todos los sacrificios, for all the sacrifices, for the 25 years that you have been in this hotel working as a maid, and tonight you get to be the most honored guest. Dedicate. And as this young woman told the story, and we're all crying, you saw the wait staff all lined up, and they brought a bouquet of flowers to her. Because it was a symbol of what's possible in America. That from one generation, you can be cleaning rooms in a hotel, and your child can be bound to medical school. See, in that moment, we all celebrated the American dream. The reality of this country is that's the promise. And for us, what it did for me, it was like I wanted to be part of that ecosystem. I wanted to be able to open doors, kick doors if possible, so that everybody had a chance at making their dreams come true. That it shouldn't matter where you start. Ultimately, it is where you're going to end up. So my career took quite an interesting turn, because 6 years later, I went back and became the director of that program at USC. I was there for 10 years, real passionate about the work. I was privileged then to be appointed as CEO of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute, where again, it was about representation, about ensuring that our Latino kids get paid for internships when they are in Congress supporting our members, because for a long time, now it's different, only the rich could afford those internships because they were not paid. And so we needed to make sure that Latinos had that opportunity, so I was really blessed to do that work. And now at the Aspen Institute, this work today is about supporting entrepreneurs to grow their businesses. And see, what is really, I think, before us is that the pandemic has become the greatest action-forcing event of our generation. If you have life after the pandemic, you have great purpose. If you're in this room, you're a decision maker. You are shaping your community. Now, as much as we talk about the power of numbers, the one thing the pandemic taught us too, that there's powerlessness and fragmentation. And that's what we're seeing a lot across our communities. And so as I share the story of this young woman, there's another story that also makes me reflect. And it's one that happened most recently in Los Angeles that brought a lot of shame to our community. So as we talk about defining power, it should never be at the expense of another community. And so I want to congratulate all of you. I see such a mixture of people here. And I know that for me, the work that we do has a Latino intentionality, but it's always about making our America stronger. And so I just want to applaud you because you build a strong ecosystem that every community here is represented. Now, thank you. Now, in terms of representation, Latinos, we've been described as the sleeping giant. Yes, you've heard this one. We've been described as the invisible group. We are not monolithic, and people seem to get confused when we vote for Trump or when we vote for Biden. Latinos are a complex community, and because of that complexity, sometimes our power gets diminished. And we have a saying in Washington, D.C., if you're not at the table, then you're on the menu. And unfortunately for our community, that is the case. I'm going to share some stats with you. Do you know that Latino workers are underpaid by $288 billion a year? That is half the earnings of Walmart in 1 year. Do you know that Latino businesses can't grow? 97% of those businesses have revenues of under $1 million a year. So only 3% of our businesses are stable. So to build inclusive economies, Latinos have to lead, have to have strong businesses that scale, have to be in high growth sectors, have to be moving up the corporate ranks of America and in government. And as philanthropists, we have to also give back. Because the idea here is that we have to co-create solutions that move America forward. So with that as the background of my talk, I want to share with you 3 things. Number 1, how we must define power in terms of wealth building for our communities. We have to think of the collective. And then how can we come together to harness our economic power to ensure that we navigate the complexity of institutions and of the times. And then finally, I want to share some solutions that we're finding in the field. We launched a program that we call the Aspen City Action Lab, and we're in 6 different cities. So I want to be able to share some of this so that as you look to grow your economy here, this could be very helpful. So in terms of defining power, I draw a lot of inspiration from Reverend Martin Luther King, who said, "Power properly understood is nothing but the ability to achieve purpose." So to have power in a community, you have to have the ability to affect the decision-making process. You have to be able to deploy the resources, both public and private, and you have to really understand how to positively influence change. So the one thing the pandemic made very clear, it exacerbated existing inequities in Black and Latino communities. At USC, we used to say, when you read someone's application, tell me their zip code and I'll tell you their life story. It's painful, but it's true. But we can do something about it. So for me, this concept of power over the last 2 years is something that I've been exploring, especially you can't help yourself being in Washington, D.C., right? In fact, one of my favorite quotes comes from the show House of Cards. Anybody see House of Cards? Okay. So there's the first episode where Frank Underwood is standing next to the president-elect and he looks into the camera and he says, "Power is like real estate. Location, location, location." So you have to remember that. And your relationship to power in the community, how close you are or how far you are, is going to determine your ability to enact change. See, we have to also understand what we bring to the table. So I'm going to give you a few facts about Latinos and how the way that Latinos go in America is really the opportunity to create more prosperity for all Americans. Currently, Latinos make up 19% of the population, or projected to become 30% by the year 2060. We're 17% of the US labor force, and according to the last census, Latinos will represent 78% of net new workers between 2020 and 2030. Every industry needs Latino workers. Latinos are young. Our median age is about 30 compared to 44 for the white community. And we have a Latino GDP of about 2.8 trillion. When it comes to our culture, well, food, just food. Salsa is preferred over ketchup. And tacos are more popular than hamburgers. When it comes to our music, if you look at Spotify's top 20 for the summer of 2022, half of the songs that were in the top top 20 in the world were in the Spanish language. Have you heard of this Casito y Cantinas? I challenge you to Google it. Very, very cool. The other thing about Latinos is that we make things happen. So when we don't get the job or we don't like our boss, we create our own businesses. That's right. We start businesses 2 to 3 times the rate. In fact, over the last 10 years, the growth in businesses has come from Latinos, 44% growth compared to 4% in the white community. And yet there are challenges. So as we think about the challenges that you're facing, when all things are equal, Black and Latino businesses face systemic barriers. So you can have the credit score, you can have the business, and it lines up to a white business, and you're still going to be denied that loan. In fact, right, there's some truth to that, right? But we have to change that. So according to the McKinsey report, if there was parity, Latinos would start an additional 743,000 businesses that would generate 6.6 million new jobs, and that would amount to about $2.3 trillion. Now that's how we build community wealth. That's what the possibility is. When we grow Latino businesses, we strengthen the circular economy of those communities. So that's what's at stake. And I want you to think about wealth, and I know in the Latino community there's this bad association with ambition. We always say, no seas ambiciosa, right? Well, what I'm saying is we have to be ambitious. We have to have lofty goals for our community. When you think about what wealth provides, resilience, an opportunity to meet your own needs in the face of adversity. We heard many times that during the pandemic, families had less than $200 to survive. So it's an opportunity to build intergenerational wealth. You need wealth to build wealth. And finally, when you do have wealth, then you have some civic empowerment and authority, and it provides community resilience. So this task of growing wealth is critical for our democracy and for the stability of many families. So then how do we go about organizing ourselves? So in the summer of 2021, I started the Aspen Institute in October 2020, and after really trying to think through how do you leverage a very elite brand that has not been available to Black or Latinos, I thought, well, let's see what we can do to support those leaders on the ground. So how can we really access the networks that the Aspen Institute can provide? If you look at our board of trustees, you see that there's a lot of billionaires on that board. How do we educate them about the needs of our communities? And over the summer, after meeting with many local leaders, I realized like powering up local efforts. So we launched this lab that we call the Aspen City Action Lab in 6 Latino majority cities. We're in Miami, we're in El Paso, we're in San Antonio, we're in Chicago, Phoenix, and San Bernardino. San Bernardino's Inland Empire. It feels like the empire does strike back, there's like nothing there. But we're making tremendous progress. We have cross-sector leaders. We have leaders like former HUD Secretary Henry Cisneros, who in San Antonio is leading the charge. We've been building political capital, because you can't move forward unless you're plugged into really the system of things of that particular community. And here are some of the things that we've learned. And just by looking at this room, I feel like you guys already know this here, but that we cannot grow in silos. Our ability to grow together is tied to our ability to learn together, to know together. Knowledge is power. We also learned that we need data about Latino businesses, that we're not on the map. And so the importance of really organizing people, place, projects, particularly in this moment to match federal investments, that onus falls on local leaders. Because as you hear the numbers, and I feel like it's the alphabet soup, you got the ARPA, you got the bill, you got the CHIPS, you got the IRA. It's a lot of money, but it's really missing our communities. So we went really focused on organizing local leaders. And it takes trust, it takes time, it takes transparency. And let me tell you, it is hard. We've been in these markets 15 months. Everything from, I can't work with that person because in high school, 50 years ago, this person's a visitor. I'm not kidding. Or it gets down to the tensions between Black and Latino communities. A scarcity mindset that if they progress, that means we don't progress. If we don't lead, that means we can't get forward, we can't move forward. You know, policy does drive behavior, and when we are sort of accepting the system that says there's only so much for you, then we're gonna fight with one another. But there are trillions of dollars, and there's a tremendous opportunity for our communities to come together and work together. So let me tell you what Miami's doing. So in Miami-Dade County, in an area, Alapata, which I learned alligator pata feet, that's what it means, Alapata, where you have the more recent immigrant communities, a lot of Afro-Latinos in that area, coming from Venezuela or Caribbean, who are not plugged into the white Latino communities in Miami. They need more support and more resources. And so the committee is looking at organizing all the groups. And I'm proud to say that in every city we have a Hispanic chamber that's working there. We have big banks, CDFIs, we have workforce development organizations. All of them working so hard, tired, because they have been trying to keep these businesses open. So what we're trying to do is organize them so that they're not in silos, so that they have the data, and that they're able to apply for these grants. And it's amazing what the Aspen Institute logo, which is a respected institute, an institute, frankly, that was created at the heels of World War II, so that something like the Holocaust never happened again. So leveraging this brand to make sure that we spotlight the opportunities and the leaders. And I'm really proud to say that thanks to the work, we've gotten the attention of the cities. So we've been able to get city managers, mayors, we've been able to get ARPA funding so that they can implement the solutions. In places like Phoenix, we want economic development, but we don't want it to be at the expense of Latino communities and local residents. So we're leading with anti-displacement. So that's something to think about. I know you're only 5% of the population here, but across America, in our places, when we think of economic development, it looks like gentrification. And as the good Reverend Luis Cortez in Philadelphia, he says, you know, when they started those promise zones, remember those? He says, well, it was a promise to get Black and Latinos out. That was the problem with the promise zones. And so how do we bring together these communities, make sure that they are leveraging their ecosystems, tapping across sectoral expertise, and being able to implement some of the solutions. We've also been focused on investments, capital and investments, quality capital. So when you think about communities of color, you're always going to see WIC offices, you're going to see workforce development offices, but when you go to white communities, you don't see that. You see investments, and you see capital, and you see networks. So you pick up the phone and you call somebody and the child gets an opportunity at the bank or whatever other institution. So how can we shift the narrative in our communities? How can we ensure that the networks are also accessible for communities of color? So the committees have been working that really intent in ensuring that this once in a lifetime federal spending reaches the people that need it the most. One of the greatest challenges that we're facing, of course, is that we have a deployment problem. So when you hear of all these dollars coming through, they stay at a particular level and they're not reaching the audiences that they needed. And you as entrepreneurs, you know this, when the PPP funding came, 90% of Black and Latino businesses did not access those funds. They were not ready to deploy the funds to the folks that needed it the most. So we're trying to right those wrongs. And if you get anything of this presentation is that you have to organize the leadership, you have to organize the places, the projects, and you have to organize the capital. One of the things that we've been really aware of is through the Treasury, there's a new initiative called the State Small Business Credit Initiative. Do you know what that is? SSBCI. Raise your hand if you do. I'm gonna see who knows in this room. Okay, there's a couple of you. So the state of Minnesota, October 13th, received $97 million to help disadvantaged businesses, Black, Latino, women-owned, veteran. And it arrived to the Minnesota Department of Employment and Economic Development. a tremendous opportunity because it will really build on private capital matching. So for every dollar the Treasury puts in, they're expecting $10 worth of that matching. You have an organization called the Missouri Technology Corporation, and they have made a pledge that they're going to quadruple the pace of investments into early stage startups, thanks to the SSBCI program. So my question is, how many of you, small businesses, Latino or Black, know about those funds? You need to know about those funds. Knowledge is power, and that's why the ecosystems are very important, because those dollars will not trickle to you, and they're meant for our communities. One of the things that the lab has done for us is that we've been able to become a feedback loop. So the other thing, I'm pretty pushy when it comes to getting the information, and when you're close to power, the White House is not that far from our offices, the opportunity to pick up the phone and call the granddaughter of the great Cesar Chavez, Julie Chavez Rodriguez, who is so aware that all the legislation, all the money that's coming through needs to reach the right audiences. Or Janice Bolter, a Latina that's the first chief racial equity advisor to Secretary Janet Yellen. And to be able to say to them, we have a problem when these funds are not reaching our community. So I hope that after my talk, you're gonna really look it up. SSBCI, $97 million available. And here's sort of the dirty little secret. You need $10 to match the one. Well, I was in a meeting at the Treasury, like, they get 4, we're good. They just have to get some matching. So it's an opportunity for all of you to be aware of the kind of funds that are coming to your community. I also want to share with you something that we've learned in the lab, that it's around the procurement opportunity. So how many of you apply for procurement opportunities with the city, with the state, with the federal government? Okay. So let me tell you about the procurement economy. Procurement economy in the United States. It is for 2021, $665 billion a year of goods and services that our government procures. And that's just federal. And if you add state, if you add counties and cities, that's an additional money that brings us at about $1 trillion annually. The spend at the federal level for Black businesses that are procuring with the government is at 1.6%. For Latino businesses is 1.7%. Our SBA administrator, Isabela Guzman, and her team disaggregated the data, because again, the data is power. And we found that women also were not represented in federal government contracts. So if you unlock those potential, that opportunity for your businesses, you're going to grow them at scale. You're going to strengthen your local, your circular economy. Every city, every metro in the US has a local procurement economy. What is yours? And do you know what you need to do to prepare? So in San Antonio, thanks to Congressman Castro, I should thank him, but also it's been tough work. We've been creating a public procurement playbook. And that playbook, we're diagnosing, getting just really what does the city, the different agencies procure. The numbers are dismal. In San Antonio, 65% of the population is Latino. We have about 13% that are African American. And you look at the top 20 contracts, a $9 billion spend, only 2 are Latino. The procurement economy has been an economy that we've been excluded. So when you learn all this, you realize the money is there, but we don't have access to it because we lack the information, we lack those networks. So I would say that as the money is flowing into your state, understand what role you play in ensuring that your companies benefit. So in this opportunity in San Antonio, what we're doing is we're organizing people to understand what the funds are, how to hold leaders accountable, and then what are the systems to deploy the capital to businesses. It's easy to say there aren't enough Latino or African American businesses. They just aren't. What can we do? Well, we can get creative. We can help with working capital. So anything that we're doing, any discussions that we have, it's also about what capital can we innovate, what products. You know the kind of products, I'm learning and I'm horrified that it's legal, but a Latino owned business, an entrepreneur gets a $1,500 loan at a 400% interest rate. That is legal in this country. Same payday lenders, that's what they charge. FinTech, they're much better, 36% for $1,500. So how can we get out of the hole when these policies exist? So we're trying to crack the code, but we're making people mad, and we're gonna make people madder. Because when you disturb the status quo, and there's so much money at the table, it feels like a House of Cards episode, doesn't it? We have to wake up. We have to ensure that we're at the table, not on the menu. So this work for me went from getting scholarships for Latino students to really waking up our communities. We can't be the sleeping giant. We can't be invisible. Our growth also benefits white Americans. If Latinos are growing so fast and we're gonna be sub-citizens, barely making it by, needing 4 jobs just to have a decent life, there's desperation, there's lack of safety for all of us. So we need to understand what the solutions are, and we need to get mad enough about it, but we also have to be really hopeful. And I'll tell you some of the things that we're finding now. So during the pandemic, we were in Miami and I met one of the entrepreneurs, and she said, you know, I've been in business over a decade, and the maximum I've been able to achieve is $2 million in annual revenues. And because I've been seeking out just connection, everything shut down. I really didn't know how to, you know, keep my business going. Her business was in signs and awnings, but mostly signs. But suddenly everybody wanted to be outside. And so, wait a minute, there's these awnings, and then she was able to plug into the network and got contracts from hospitals, from universities. And during the pandemic, she grew her business to 6 million, and she's projecting to be at 10 million. So these are the stories that give us hope. My friend Della Clark, who is in Philadelphia, she's CEO of the Enterprise Center, she shares a story how sometimes you just gotta get mad enough, gotta pick up that phone and do something about it. So during the pandemic, she called the different anchor institutions, universities, museums, you name it, she called them. And she wanted toilet paper contracts. Toilet paper contracts, yeah, everybody needs toilet paper. And then she was able to get $5 million worth of contracts, and she divided it to 3 Black-owned businesses. Isn't that incredible? It took one person, and guess what? Those businesses are growing and they have more contracts. Sometimes it's really about the advocacy, the courage to be able to do that. In Washington, D.C., there's an organization, it's called the D.C. Anchor Alliance. And my friend Steve Laudet, he's also very courageous. He has been helping Black businesses access contracts with universities like Georgetown University, and he shares a story how he gets them the contract and there's a policy that says you have to have 3 times the staff, an engineer, the bonding insurance, and we'll call you in a year. There is no way you can ever do that. So when he called the university, kind of mad, because he had secured this one contract he thought had helped this African American business owner. And the person on the other side of the university, I didn't know that policy existed. There are policies in place that are from the 60s. I have the privilege of serving on the SBA Council for Underserved Communities, and my chair is John Rogers. And John Rogers is just an incredible human being. His father, his grandfather, was one of the people that started sort of Black Wall Street. And when everything went out in flames, he moved the family, they went to Chicago. And John, who's the grandson, he has an asset management company, and he's the largest African American asset management company. And the one thing that he has really been inculcating in us is that when we're talking about procurement, we're talking opportunities for our community, we have to ensure that we also talk about business diversity, which means ensuring that Black and Latino businesses not only get the janitorial services contracts, or the construction contracts, but also the professional contracts. So I'm sharing you all these stories because that's courageous hope. There's an opportunity, and every one of us can make that difference. And I think that when we do that, we're going to have a stronger America. The story that I shared with you at the beginning about this young woman, well, eventually she started her own practice. She became a fertility specialist, and that, seems to be a very hot commodity to have. And I think of that opportunity that from one generation in this country, we can leapfrog. If we're not careful, that's going to go away. This is a young democracy. It's an experiment. And if we have strong economic basis and opportunities for diverse families, then we're going to be able to move America forward. And I really commend you for being here. I see such a diverse audience. We're caring about Hispanic heritage. We're 5%, Latinos are 5% of St. Louis, 106,000. Incredible that you have such a strong chamber. There are cities across America that have more Latinos than you have. So thank you very much for having me here. I'm not giving you some sobering information, but hopefully make you man enough to decide to learn more, to be empowered, to grow your businesses, and remember, procurement economy, that's where it's at. Thank you.
Oh, you can do better than that for her. We should see, based on what she had to say, some bottom lines change in 2023. Should we not? Should we not? She gave us real information. I was taking notes. My husband's sitting straight up in his seat, looking back and be like, did you write that down? Did you write that down? Yes, I wrote all of that down, honey. I wrote all of that down. Because we're small business owners as well. So there should be change happening in this room. Googling happening in this room, as she said. Thank you so much. That was informative and life-changing, actually. Absolutely life-changing information. Can you give it up one more time? Thank you so much. Such a pleasure. So we want to present now the rest of our program, and we want to, there's going to be some more joy in the room tonight because we're going to honor so many people. There's a reason that these beautiful prints are here as well.